Hello everyone, today we're going to check out the history and the gravesites of Lynyrd Skynyrd. Stay tuned. In the summer of 1964, teenagers Ronnie Van Zant, Bob Burns, and Gary Rossington met while playing on rival baseball teams in Jacksonville, Florida. An impromptu afternoon jam session in the carport of Burns' parents' house inspired the trio to form a band. Before long, guitarist Alan Collins and bassist Larry Junstrom were added to the mix, and the band began entertaining Jacksonville audiences, first as My Backyard, then as the Noble Five, then as the 1%, before finally arriving on the name Lynyrd Skynyrd in 1969. The name was partially inspired by a PE instructor by the name of Lynyrd Skynyrd at the boys' high school, who was known for his strict policy forbidding long hair on the boys. By 1970, the band was well on their way to developing the hard-driving mix of blues, country, and rock that would become their signature. Having become one of the top bands in the Jacksonville area, they had an opportunity to record their first demos at the now iconic Muscle Shoals Sounds Studio in Alabama. Originally intended to form the basis of their debut album, these tracks were ultimately shelved, which made their follow-up effort, pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd, their actual debut in 1973. The album, featuring the hit song Freebird, sold over 1 million copies and reached number 19 on the Billboard Hot 100 charts. The band's fan base continued to grow throughout 1973, fueled in part by their performances as the opening act for The Who's U.S. Quadrophenia Tour. Recorded and released in 1974, Second Helping cemented their legacy as a band determined to face the world entirely on its own terms. In addition to introducing the world to the three-guitar attack that would become their hallmark, the album also featured some of Ronnie Van Zant's finest moments as a songwriter, with tracks like Sweet Home Alabama and The Ballad of Curtis Lowe, establishing a blueprint for Southern rock that would inspire artists of all genres for decades. Sweet Home Alabama reached number 8 on the charts in the summer of 1974, on its way to becoming one of the best-known American rock anthems of all time. Over the next few years, personal issues began to take their toll on the group. The band's next album, Nothing Fancy, was recorded in a rush 17 days to accommodate an aggressive touring schedule. Disagreements and pressure led to fissures among the group and prompted additional lineup changes. One of those new additions was Steve Gaines, whose multiple talents were on full display in the band's fifth album, Street Survivors. In addition to multiple songwriting credits and rousing guitar riffs, Gaines also served as co-vocalist, the only time to that point anyone other than Ronnie Van Zant had sung lead vocals for the group. The album was an instant success, going gold in just 10 days. It would eventually go double platinum. It was marked the last Skynyrd album featuring original members Ronnie Van Zant and Alan Collins. It also served as Steve Gaines' only Skynyrd studio recording. On October 20th, 1977, just 3 days after the release of Street Survivors, the band was flying from a show in Greenville, South Carolina to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, when their chartered plane ran out of fuel. The plane crashed in the woods 5 miles outside of Gillsburg, Mississippi, killing band members Ronnie Van Zant and Steve Gaines, as well as backup singer Cassie Gaines, Steve's sister, and a road manager, Dean Kilpatrick. Both pilots also lost their lives. The other band members suffered serious injuries but survived. Skynyrd disbanded following the crash. It would be 10 years before they reunited.
Wow! Play some Freebird, man!
Okay, here we are at the Riverside Memorial Cemetery in Jacksonville, Florida. The grave of Leon Wilkinson. He played bass in the band in the later years. He died in 2001. I believe he was known for his eccentric hats. The grave of Ronnie Van Zant's parents, Lacey and Marion. Mother Marion died in 2000 and Father Lacey died in 2004. The grave of Billy Powell. He played the keyboards or the piano in the band. He died in 2009. Okay, this is the final burial place of lead singer Ronnie Van Zant, right next to the pond within the cemetery. He was moved from his original burial spot in Orange Park, south of here, due to vandalism. And this is now his final burial place, right here next to the pond within the cemetery. He is now encased in cement, so he cannot be bothered. A man is not truly dead until he is forgotten. Huh. Okay, we are across the street in the same cemetery. This is the grave of Lynyrd Skynyrd. He was the coach that the band is named after, the high school coach. Okay, we're now at the Van Zant house. This is the home where Ronnie and his brothers actually grew up during the 50s and 60s, right here in Jacksonville, Florida. Okay, we're now at Riverside High School here in Jacksonville. It used to be called Robert E. Lee High School. This is where the band members all went to school back in the 60s, where they first met and formed the band. And obviously, this is also where the coach, Lynyrd Skynyrd, worked. We are now at the cemetery in Orange Park. This is the memorial for Steve Gaines. He used to be buried here. He has since been moved to an undisclosed location due to vandalism. He was the guitarist who died in the plane crash. And this here is the original burial spot of Ronnie Van Zant before he was moved by his family. And this is where backup singer Cassie Gaines is buried within the cemetery, right next to her brother. She also died in the plane crash.